How are you?
What's going on? It's been a while, isn't it? It has
I
been a
know,
while.
I know. Life gets in the way sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
What's been going on? How are you guys doing?
Not much, man. You know it is for the listeners that
Oh, yeah.
are tuning in. Probably not anybody live right now because we just went live. But for the listeners that log on to the podcast, we've had a couple of weeks off. I had to travel home due to a death in the family. We've also had family visiting other people doing fun stuff. So we just haven't had time. Lots of things have just got in the way. However, if you really wanted to hear our voices, there's about 32 games from last season you could have listened to for the Norwich one, considering it was basically peak potable from last year, where they just dominated, had like 30 shots, scored none, and were disappointing. So if you ever wanted to go back and listen to one, just pick one at random. Other than that, how have you two been? How have you spent your last 3 weeks?
Doing a lot. I had the first time I had my parents over and I was entertaining quite a lot now that people can travel again. So that's very nice. And then I ended up going on holiday last week, which was also very nice. So I can't complain too much.
Where did you go?
I went to New Orleans. So actually, one of my really good friends works on one of the cruise ships that go out of the Mississippi River. So I hadn't seen him in a few years. So I thought, why not? And just go on a cruise. It sounds very, very old of me, but it was actually really, really good.
Sounds good to me. Adam, what about you?
I've just been, keeping a baby ticking along, outside of that, aside from yesterday's game, I've been enjoying not watching Brighton play football. That's been kind of nice because I think we're all, in some ways, a bit broken by recent performances. And although Norwich was better, you'd expect better, but it also sort of gave us PTSD from last season, as you mentioned. It's like, oh, finally, okay, now we look like maybe we can do something. Oh, it's the same problem that we had last year. So yeah, that's really been it. Parenting and not watching Brighton.
Well, let's talk about Brighton. Unfortunately, we weren't able to cover last week, so like we said, we've covered that pretty quickly. Don't want to delay and lag around on a 0-0 draw against bottom of the league that should have been a lot better. When we have such a fun conversation to have this week, we picked a good one to actually be back in action. The Emirates, not exactly our happiest place to go, but Arsenal are quite a good team for us to play. I think we've won 4, drawn 3, lost 3 now.
It's Potter's best opposition. Is his most favoured, most wins than anyone else against Arsenal.
Is it? That's a great stat. Yeah, and it proved to be so, right? Arsenal were phenomenal at home this season. Like I said, it's not a great place for anybody to go. I believe that we were only their 4th defeat this season. Only Manchester City and Liverpool had less. Liverpool, of course, unbeaten at Anfield. We started off with a whole new side. Let's talk about that because I don't think anybody on the timeline, maybe in the changing rooms, definitely between us three, knew just exactly what lineup we were going to look like yesterday, what formation it was going to look like. And I think I got into half time 1-0 up and still unsure as to what the formation was exactly looking like. Couple of changes. Caicedo into the side, Bissouma into the side, and Mwepu into the side. I'm happy to have all of those back, especially if Bissouma is going to make some kind of effort. Mope dropped to the bench, Lamptey dropped to the bench. Webster is on the bench, which is great. What did you make of that lineup other than just confusion?
Yeah, it was a bit dumbfounding, wasn't it? I didn't really understand where we were going with it. It's always exciting when you have, obviously, Mwepu coming in. We've spoken about it the last few pods around what he brings and that dynamism that he brings to the side and a bit of effort up and down the pitch in the middle. And then with Bissouma and then Caicedo, we haven't seen too much of it, but we know he's a bundle of energy. So I didn't really know what formation we were playing, but I knew that it included a hell of a lot of up and down the pitch to try and outwork them a little bit. So I was looking forward to seeing that. In hindsight, that's not how it panned out, but I think we definitely benefited from that energy.
Yeah, there was like you say, the confusion was paramount when we saw that lineup, because you looked at it and you're okay, Kukureya, Dunk, Veltman makes sense, and then you looked at everyone else and you thought, okay, what exactly is this formation? And of course, then Potter did what Potter does, is partway through switched. So we started out with a five, and I think it was basically, wasn't it Trossard and Gross playing left wing back and right wing back?
That's
Which,
what it looked like to me.
Not sure that would be my first pick. But again, on the other side, let's also just balance the conversation out a little bit. Is that Arteta decided to start Granit Xhaka at left back, and then realised around halftime what a horrendous mistake that he'd made. And I think he moved Martinelli back, and then moved Xhaka back into his actual real position, into sort of central midfield, and that helped them when they came out after the break and had a little bit of the front foot. But I think I was mostly excited. And Josh, you've been harping on about, like, you've been big on Mwepu. When he comes back, it will make a big difference. And there was a lot of people in the Twitter sphere that doubted that. People saying, Mwepu, we don't even know what he is. Has he been that impressive? He's not going to make a difference. And so you get to have them eat crow a little bit. And of course, Casado was a big win to see. And we'll talk about his performance. But wow, if he is half as good as he was yesterday for some of his career at his club, we are in for a treat. And that's another gem that's been found.
Yeah. Well said. I was going to point out that Xhaka, actually, Arteta had the same issues in terms of just about what he was playing. Xhaka at left back, their central midfield was basically just Lokonga. There was no one else. Odegaard, Rowe, they're not exactly combative central midfielders. And when you're placing them in a dogfight with Caicedo, Basuma, and Mwepu, it was only going to end one way. Lacazette, anonymous, really. They look most dangerous out wide. And when you ended up having to put Martinelli back, you really then nullified that. They looked better as a team, but Martinelli was really their problem man yesterday, I felt. And moving him back a little bit helped us a lot, I think. First goal, one of those ones that I feel like we've seen an awful lot this season and last. And Mopé or Trossard or whoever else skies that over the bar. How much heart was in your mouth when you saw that squared in? And obviously, big props to Lewis Dunk. That ball in, most centre halves just hoof that clear. He knew exactly what he was doing, and it pulled it off to an absolute T, getting that over to Mwepu.
It's props to Mwepu being there as well. They covered it on the US commentary a little bit that, he stayed up and sort of gambled that was going to come on that side. Again, a really good ball, but I think you're spot on, right? That we've seen enough, like, especially with the Norwich game with 30 odd shots and 4 on target. Statistically, you'd put your money on this going anywhere but the top the top bins nearly. So yeah, it's just one of those. But I think, like we've said before, you want that to fall to either Welbeck or Trossard because they're probably our two best finishers. So if it wasn't going to fall to Welbeck, that's pretty much the only other person I'd be comfortable with it falling to. Unfortunately, he just guided it into the back of the net. It's a solid finish.
I feel like Mwepu started to carve himself a bit of a niche in that half of the time, I don't know if he truly means what he's doing. And I say this with the greatest respect to him. I feel like he was trying to pass this ball to Welbeck. I feel like he was trying to square it to Welbeck. I might be wrong about that. Even so, not to take away from the fact that he took a really nice touch from that. It was a great ball from Dunk.
Oh, yeah.
Really good touch from Mwepu. He got his head up. He saw that for once, I tell you what amazed me more than the finish, we had like 3 people in the box. Can you believe that? Normally, we've just got Mopé just sort of skulking around the area, not actually sort of diving in for the chance, and then no one within about 40 feet. And we had multiple people in the box. Wow, what a difference that makes, because one of them actually got their foot through it. And yeah, Trossard is fresh off a couple of weeks back now at this point, but a pretty stellar performance for the Belgium national team has thankfully carried some of that over to the league for us. But yeah, big finish.
He looked very comfortable out wide, didn't he, yesterday? Not so much defensive work. Kukureya worked overtime back there. But he looked very comfortable out wide again. I thought he looked. I don't know whether that's where he played for Belgium this last 2 weeks. I didn't get to see it, but he looked very happy out there. A lot more space for him than he was previously getting in the middle. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing him out there a little bit more often again.
And we touch on this a few times, don't we? Where we like playing against teams that are going to play their own game against us. It gives those guys out wide a little bit more space because we're being pushed up on. And the possession stats alone will tell you yesterday in terms of where we were with that. But, when we're dominating games and everyone has sort of two banks of four, it's very hard for Trossard to get any space whatsoever because he is one of our danger men. So when Arsenal start trying to play their own game and sort of push up on us and control the game, and when it does break to Mwepu and when it does break to Trossard, they do have an extra couple of yards, and it shows that these are quality players that we're talking about, and if they have the space, they're able to do something with it.
Yeah, disallowed goal right on halftime, like minutes, seconds before the whistle was to be blown. We enjoyed a bit of back and forth on Twitter between Piers Morgan and Gary Lineker. Always nice to be the subject of their little feud. Goal or no goal? For me, it looked about as blatant as it can get that he was only Sanchez was in front of him, and even then barely. For me, I can't believe it took 4 minutes for them to decide that. It looked like a clear offside to me.
Yeah, it was offside. Yeah, it was just as simple as that. Just because they couldn't properly get the perfect camera angle to show it. I mean, it's very clear that what you could see was Sanchez's foot, and what you couldn't see was Martinelli's. And despite the fact that some people, including one of the ones that you mentioned, didn't really understand how the offside rule works, it was offside. Yeah. Having said that, though, God, we looked dicey in that first half against set pieces, and it was making me really nervous every time they got a corner, which felt like they had about 400, or a free kick just outside the box. That felt like it was sort of deserved in some senses. So I'm glad we sorted that out a little bit later on in the game.
Yeah. Looked shaky at set pieces, didn't we? All really day.
Yeah. It was always a worry. I think they had 8 or 9 corners in the end, and every single one seemed to cause a problem, whether we were flapping at it or whether it sort of fell to the feet of Veltman, for example. We did look very shaky. I think, like Adam said, it would have been just desserts if that was allowed, because we were very shaky from them. But it is offside. So as we said, I don't think everyone understands the offside rule on Twitter. So yeah.
The other thing to say though is we probably looked a little bit more shaky because we have lost a lot of height in that defense. We've spoken about this before, but your back line that you have right now, especially the three, I suppose, if you want to call them that, or whatever it was, they're not the tallest folk. Like Dunk's got the height there. Veltman's not a tall guy. Cucurella is, if you take away his hair, is not a tall guy. We don't have that. It's not like the golden days of playing Dunk and Duffy and then throw in he who will not be named at Newcastle. Like that's a different proposition for set piece defending.
Yeah. And we went into half time, I think, deservedly 1-0 bar in that last 5 minutes where we really sat back. Second half, bit of a different story. Up until the goal, which was 66 minutes, I think, Arsenal had 72% possession. But just like the Albion against Norwich, couldn't do anything with it. They had 4 shots to our 3 and none on target. So a lot of the stuff they were doing was just classic Arsenal of old, just keeping the ball and not doing a great deal with it. Then comes a passage of play that's almost goal of the season worthy in how slick it was. I mean, the one-touch passing, Caicedo's touch, run, ball in, just disgusting. And Mwepu's finish was just unbelievable. Again, similar to what Adam said, I've been saying this for a few weeks as well. Whenever I see him play, like I am forever convinced he is like our Premier League Bass Savage. He is again a player that I fully agree with you on, Adam. I'm never sure if he means it or not. And again, yesterday that strike and that finish was just so picture perfect. but I can't help but wonder if he fully knew what he was doing when he went in to hit that. But what a goal it was overall. The entire left-hand side play was just outrageous. And Caicedo doesn't look like he's had to make a step up at all from the very well-run beer shot in Belgium.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's one of the goals of the season. It will be, because it's just the 1-2 with Caicedo. Just, I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he saw Mwepu at the edge of the box rather than putting it across the goal. But yeah, I mean, just so slick, so good. We know our passing is intricate. It's just that it really lacks any impetus sometimes. So having that sort of end result and having Caicedo trying to make something out of nothing, it's such a good finish too. I mean, again, benefit of the doubt, like hitting it on the half volley in that way, side foot. I mean, yeah, he doesn't know how to celebrate, but it was a really good goal. I was very happy.
I tweeted this out, but what made it extra special was that I think it involved our 4 best players on the day yesterday. It was Cucurella into Caicedo back to Cucurella, and obviously the finish from Mwepu. Who am I forgetting about in that equation? Trossard. Thank you very much. Just incredible interplay. If I don't care if we don't know what Mwepu means, as long as he keeps doing it. But you also saw the other side of that in the first half. I feel like he took a shot and it just went absolutely wild to nowhere. And you're going to get some of that with him. He's going to be a little bit up and down, a bit mercurial. But we'll take that. And probably, if it wasn't for a certain strike by Dimitri Payet in midweek, that's probably goal of the week for me. But no one's beaten that Payet shot. If you haven't seen it, go look that up.
Yeah, you should. Google it, Reddit it, whatever you need to do. That was a pile driver. Absolutely outrageous. Alex and Alex in the chat, 2 different Alexes, I think, very happy. Yesterday was incredible. We're the best club in the world, which is the classic post-win statement there. Next week it'll be we couldn't win a game in League 2. And El Du brothers in the chat, hello. Hope you're doing well. As soon as we went 2-0, I don't feel like we fully fell onto the back foot until the subs were made. Do you? I thought we looked okay. As soon as we scored that second goal, I thought we continued playing pretty well. It was only as soon as we made the 2 changes, Mwepu off and Basuma off for Lallana and Lamptey, we seemed to go full park the bus mode and really just turned attack versus defense. And as Brighton are well known for, it was proper squeaky bum time for that last 12, well, more like almost 20 minutes with the 6 minutes added on. And the goal, of course, which really caused some nerves. What did you make of the goal? What did you make of the end? Did you think we were in trouble? There was parts of it where I thought, oh boy, we're going to come away from here with a point, when I would have been delighted at kickoff, and it's going to feel like an absolute battering by the time we get to full time.
That would have been horrendous, wouldn't it? Because when you with the flow of the game, if you come out of that with a point, I also think you just think about how happy everyone is right now and how we feel, and Alex saying we're the best club in the world. That just perpetuates the bad feeling that we've had over the past 7+ games. If you draw that game, because it just feels like we've got absolutely nothing about us. The goal was obviously complete crap. He just struck it. Who did it bounce off of? Was it?
It's well back, unfortunately.
Yeah, like it wasn't going. It wasn't going in if it wasn't for that deflection. Let's also not forget the fact that Sanchez pulled out an absolute stunner of a left-handed save at one point later, and saved the game. I think what was weird to me though was towards the end, because we got. When we got kicked while we were down, was 6 minutes of added on time, which I have no idea where that came from. Yeah. Do we even have a stoppage? I think one of you guys mentioned that in WhatsApp while they were chatting.
We didn't even have the full subs. We only had 5 out of the 6.
I don't know what went on. But what was funny to me, Arsenal just seemed like they had 45 minutes of stoppage time. They just, lob a little throw in, play it back. So they didn't put the ball forward. So it was sort of fortunate. it felt horrible towards the end because it felt that there was inevitability that we were going to concede that second goal. But they hung on in there. And I genuinely think at this point, this is the game where it changes your perspective on the rest of the season. Some of the other results go the way that they have. And you feel a little bit better now going into the rest of the fixtures.
It's kind of what you wanted, wasn't it? I think it's just the goals, obviously, but then there is an air of inevitability, especially being Brighton fans, that we will piss it, and there will be a last minute equaliser, and that's we're so used to that, and especially the run that we've been on at the moment, it would have been so typical for that to happen, and we're just trying to get out of this rut, and you could feel it that if that does happen, it's like, oh great. We saw that coming from a mile off. So the fact that we clung on, especially for those 6 minutes that came out of absolutely nowhere, and were able to hold on to it with relative comfortability. Like we said, there was nothing coming through the middle. There's a fluke goal in the 88th minute, makes for a bit of squeaky bum time at the end. But ultimately, we'd sort of settled that and we're fine. I think it's going to be better in that dressing room that we held on at the end, and I think it's going to feel like we are out of this rut. We're seeing we're the best club in the world. We're seeing that knee-jerk positive reaction now, a full spectrum shift of what we've seen over the last 2 months, and all of a sudden all is well in the world again. But I think it's more important that we clung on and actually we're able to see that out, because that's testament to what they're trying to do. And I think in the dressing room we're going to take that forwards and hopefully have a good end to the season.
Here's the downside. Sorry to cut you off, Josh.
No, you're fine.
We probably, regardless of what happened in this game, the next 2 games aren't pretty for us. So if we didn't fix it here, we weren't going to fix it potentially until the end of this month against Southampton, who are truly a Southampton-esque season after yesterday's result. I don't know any club that can be quite as polarizing in their up and downs as them. But yeah, Spurs, who battered us, and then City. That could have been a horrible run for us if we didn't get the 3 points here.
Both also away from home, of course.
Well, I think that actually favours us, to be honest with you.
At this point, yeah. Well, except at the Etihad, because I don't think anything is favourable playing Manchester City. But
true.
Yeah, you're right. We've got 3 games very quickly back to back starting next weekend. A nice early morning for us here in the States against Spurs. Brilliant. Yeah. Hate it. And then Manchester City in the midweek. And then, of course, we finally get back to the Amex, fortunately or unfortunately, against Saints. Big one to talk about as well before we get, there is a point in the chat I do want to touch on as well. But before we get to that, big win yesterday, I thought, was Adam Webster coming on, albeit for 10 minutes. Boy, oh boy, have we missed him in this run of 6 straight losses and a draw. I say that Norwich didn't really do anything last week, but we missed him nonetheless from set pieces as well, because he's a heck of a presence there, isn't he? I would imagine that we'll be seeing him start next weekend. Do you?
I hope so. I really do. I think we always say on this pod week in, week out, he just brings something different to that team, and we rely on him quite a lot to bring it out of that defensive third as well. So I sure hope that he starts next week.
He should do. And the other pieces, I think we finally, after that little rest and that break, I think we saw the better part of Dunk yesterday, right? He didn't look as shaky as he had done in the previous X number of games. Bring back his partner in Webster, and suddenly we don't look at that defense and go, this is an absolute liability.
Yeah. Alex in the chat, was that our first ever Premier League win in April? Yes, it was. Unbelievable, really. What makes it worse is that April tends to be a makeup month as well. So we've probably played a fair few games that we normally wouldn't have to, e.g. Manchester City this month. So the fact that it is our first ever Premier League win with probably a bunch of fixtures being made up in the last 5 years, not great. But we take it. It's Pete Brighton, isn't it, doing it away at the Emirates after they've had such a good home form and after what we've been going through the last 6 weeks or 7-8 weeks. Just about says it all. Alex as well in chat says hopefully they'll get rid of the dead seagull in the Amex before then. two things. Can't decide if that's a real bird that's actually dead somewhere in the Amex and they want to get rid of it, or he's talking about the crowd and them being dead, and he's hoping that they get rid of that aspect and get some more noise in the stadium. I think that speaks a lot to how poor the atmosphere is at the Amex these days, that I'm not sure which one he's talking about. So prayers up to the dead seagull either way. Player-wise, let's talk about some of the others. I guess let's talk about the debutant man with the assist, Moises Caicedo, all the way through. I tweeted out partway through, I thought he basically made Odegaard anonymous for about 70 minutes. I thought he was just absolutely superb. He clearly had a job to do on him, and he did it. And his progressive passing, his progressive running, I'd read, I think it was on The Athletic, maybe somewhere else, that Ecuador see him as the perfect number 8. And he certainly put in that kind of performance yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, really good. It's just, really good to watch. It's 20 years old, obviously already playing international football. Clearly we've been giving him some time to adapt to the English Premier League, or at least through a apocalyptic loan spell at Beershot. But yeah, it looks like he's going to hit the ground running again. But again, we can't, from a 20-year-old, we can't expect that week in, week out. We do need to give him some sort of wiggle room to have an off game here and there. We know this and we're aware of it. So from what we saw yesterday, turning up at the Emirates and making Odegaard, who's having a very good season, look bang average at best. Another really good sort of young player on our hands that will progress.
He is the thing that we need. Where we've talked before, where we have this wealth in abundance of midfielders that can sit deeper and offer you something, whether it's breaking up play or creating passes. We don't have that many midfielders that can drive forward, and he can do a bit of both. You saw that with Caicedo and Mwepu are our two guys that can actually give you something more. They'll take a shot, they'll push up. And that was just very apparent in the game today. We lose a little bit from the solidity when we with some of these players in the team compared to if you sat there with, I know we don't have him now, but Moda and Lallana sat deeper in that midfield along with Basuma. Very different proposition, and it's just nice to have that flexibility to be able to switch it out. And like you said, he looked like he does a good job with interceptions and marking, even though he's a bit more of a slight guy. Really, really impressive performance. For me, I know we're not specifically talking man of the match just yet, but Mwepu, it has to be Mwepu. But Caicedo was close, and Cucurella is just we said it time and time again. But in some ways, he played two roles today because he got forward really well, and he had to cover for Trossard, that you hinted at earlier, Josh, as well. It doesn't matter. The guy can play two positions. And I truly think I've said this before, I think he could play a slightly different role in this team if he wanted to. If we sat him in front of the back four and told him to play kind of like how Caicedo played, push forward, but also sit back when you need to when we don't have the ball, I think he could do that just as comfortably as playing on the wing.
I think my only concern, and spoiler alert, as of right now, he's a shoo-in for my player of the season. And I don't think that's a particularly big surprise to anyone, so I don't mind saying it. My only concern with him, and the only drawback that I've found from Marc Cucurella yet, is he is the most left-footed man I've seen ever. He is so left-footed that's what worries me about playing more in the middle of the park, is his absolute either inability or just absolute refusal to utilize his right foot on just about anything. Would be the only reason I would be concerned about that.
Yeah, you're probably right. It gives him a little literal one dimension, doesn't it? But I don't know. I in an emergency situation, or whether you want to give more game time to Solly, because he obviously slightly gets sacrificed, and he's been relatively good this season too, Solly March, right? it's a shame that you have to start other players ahead of him just from a positional standpoint. And we know what Potter's like. He wants players to have positional flexibility. He wants random, Pascal Gross playing right wing back, Trossard playing left wing back. We need that flexibility. So it depends. It depends how the summer shapes up with faces we bring in, the faces that leave.
He was due to come on yesterday, wasn't he? And had to sit back down as soon as Mwepo popped that ball into the back.
Pretty nice reason to have to sit back down, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Craig, conversation in the chat. Do you think we should continue leaving Mopé on the bench? What are your thoughts?
I mean, as much as yesterday went well, and we're talking about danger men of the 4 best players that Adam alluded to. One person that we haven't really heard a lot of is Welbeck, who I thought was quite ineffective in what we were trying to do. I don't think we needed him per se. It didn't look like we did. But there was nothing of note that really Welbeck did that really changed the game or had any impetus. He didn't really hold up play because we weren't looking to do that. That's not his fault. We just weren't looking to hold up the play in the middle of the park. We were going wide where there was space. But I think it probably will do more pay good if he does stay on the bench. I feel that if you start changing this team up, and I think we should play the same team if we can, barring Mwepu's injury. I hope it's not too bad. But I think personally, I would keep him on the bench for the next game.
He was shocking against Norwich. And he's been shocking in a lot. Not just, he put in a good shift, but he's been shocking. And I know that we've tried to get away from putting the full blame on the striker position, putting it on Mopé. There's also the fact that, you mentioned Welbeck not being particularly effective in the game. The system that we employ and the way that the style of play just doesn't really lend itself that massively to a striker that's just banging in goals constantly. And Andy Naylor actually put a really good article out on The Athletic. I feel like we promote The Athletic, don't we? Don't get anything. we have to ask them for...
I don't even subscribe.
There you go. Brilliant. But it was titled Just How Bad is Brighton Shooting? And the title picture was just Mopé with his hands on his head. But point being, the big takeaway from it was that we have a higher tendency to shoot. We're about 8th or 9th in the overall Premier table. So we shoot a lot, but we shoot from terrible areas. These long distance shots, and I don't need to tell people, you've seen them with your eyes. That's the big problem. We rarely get strikers into positions where they've even got half a chance. And the problem with Mopé, though, is that when we finally do make that happen, I think if that ball from Mwepu comes to him instead of Trossard yesterday, he probably misses it, probably shanks it. And that's the margin. That changes the game. Maybe you don't get the offside decision with Martinelli. You lose against Arsenal. That is a liability that we can't afford to have in this team right now.
Especially when you're trying to break that rut as well, right? You've got someone that's shot of confidence that really isn't playing to the game that we know that he can play at. So it's akin to a timeout, really, isn't it? Like, the back stronger, as Crouchy would say. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? Where this clearly isn't working. You've had a tough period of games where it just hasn't been happening for you. And for the betterment of the team, something needs to change in that respect. So hopefully, he comes back from it, refresh mindset, comes back a little fresher. But for now, I think he stays on the bench.
Yeah, it lends itself to a player that's happy to create as much as they are to score, right? And Welbeck has 0 assists this season, Mopé 2, Dennis Undav 9. Clearly, there's an idea there as to why we're bringing him in. Other than the fact that he's banged in like 1 million goals, he's clearly happy being a creator too. If you go on Who Scored and a couple of the other websites, his main strengths not only is finishing, obviously, but his through balls, his key passes. He's just as important in the build-up as he is in front of goal, and we're missing that massively. We're missing that massively throughout the team, really. I saw an absolutely outrageous stat that I just looked at myself. Enoch Mwepu, only Alzate, Connolly, now he's gone, Steele, Caicedo, Sarmiento, Taylor Richards, Ferguson, and Locadia have played less minutes than Mwepu this season. So half of them are gone. One of them got like a full season injury. One of them spent half the season at Beershot, and the other one's a backup goalkeeper. And he has more assists than anyone else on the team.
Yeah. People called him flop though, weren't they? And Justice has put in the YouTube chat as well. Let's not forget that little cut scene where he honestly looked like it was something you would expect from a Messi, where he absolutely murked two Arsenal players, pulled off a little nutmeg, and just canted forward.
It just pulled up on my Twitter feed as well. I just saw it. I was like, if Adam doesn't if you don't mention it now, I will. But yeah,
unbelievable.
Even Caicedo as well, and we're talking about sort of that presence in the midfield with Mapu and Caicedo. You know, they've got tricks in them as well, right? They can get out of tight spaces and then they can drive forward from there. And I think that was the difference, like especially yesterday, where you get it out wide and then all of the, like especially those two, just drive forward and get the bodies out forward to the pitch. And it helps that Arsenal are doing a high press, so there's more space in behind. But to have those sort of people push forward and create that space not only helped them both and helped us win the game, but also allows Basuma to do what he wants as well, who I thought was actually improved yesterday.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he?
He was solid in that foundation of the defensive mid, and that was his job, right? Caicedo and Wepo, you up and down, bound it, make as much space as you can, leave Basuma to do his defensive clearing up, and I thought he was much better as a result.
I hate this because I've seen it a lot, but I want to say it anyway. A lot this last 3 weeks since we last did a podcast, I've seen an awful lot of people on Twitter going through the training pictures going, they look happy, not like because they aren't daring to smile for the camera midway through, probably like being tired out from a practice or whatever they're doing. But he looked happy yesterday, didn't he? He looked happier than I've seen him for a while, Basuma. He looked like he was very comfortable playing the role he was playing. He looked like he put his foot in where he usually should be putting his foot in. And I thought that whatever these two guys next to him are doing, your Wepus and your Caicedos, they're playing into his strengths. And he looked happier yesterday. He looked like he was good doing what he was doing. And I don't know about whether he walked off right at the end. I don't know any of that stuff. But he just looked like a more comfortable player yesterday. Maybe he just needed to get his head in the game. Maybe it is the people he's playing next to. But he looked more like the old self yesterday, I thought.
Well, they claimed that he was sick or whatever in the lead up to the Norwich game, and that's why he was on the bench. So maybe he was carrying something, maybe he wasn't. But whether it was his head or whether it was his body that was slightly unhealthy, it was a different proposition yesterday. It wasn't old Basuma, as in it wasn't far and away the best player on the pitch, which is what we had grown accustomed to. But he wasn't crap, which is what we'd seen recently.
And to the point of these players being happy, right? We just come off a 6-game losing streak, and these are ultimate competitive people. It could be that he's not happy with losing week in, week out. So, you know, there's also that aspect to it. I know we've seen a dip in performance from him, but there is a mentality side to this game, and losing 6 in a row should have an impact on you as a competitive footballer. I'm just happy that this is hopefully the start of coming out of that rut, not just for Basuma, but for a number of these players where we can see some confidence get back into them.
Yeah. Well, we did break the duck yesterday, right? We scored not just one, but 2 goals from open play, a magnificent feat that we hadn't actually overcome since February against Watford. And does it really count against Watford?
I'd argue no.
Right. So then you got to look even further back. There's something I don't want to. The performance was amazing, but there is something about Arsenal where we suddenly go above and beyond. Because I said this last time. For me, even though we didn't win the game back in, I think it was October at home, that 0-0 draw against Arsenal for me was our highest quality performance, even if we didn't actually put the ball in the net. Probably outside from maybe the second game of the season against Watford, where we absolutely destroyed them. But again, it's Watford. Does it really count? And then we go ahead today, and I think probably would anyone else argue? I think the only other way you could probably say that maybe a better or better outcome performance was maybe that draw at 2-2 at Liverpool. I'm not sure whether you guys have got a different game, but probably this was arguably our best game of the season, result performance, especially the context. And it's Arsenal again. Maybe, hopefully, we can do that against, another team. That would be nice.
I mean, we're not bad against Spurs. I don't feel like we've ever been utterly embarrassed by them.
The FA Cup game, I would probably say.
Other than that,
sort of an embarrassment, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a Potter thing too, right? Like, I think even under Houghton, we had a good record against Arsenal. Obviously, speaks for itself. But Potter himself enjoys playing Arsenal, whichever team he's on, doesn't he? Whatever it is about the way we're set up, both before and after, and currently during Potter's reign, just seems to lend itself for us to cause Arsenal all kinds of problems. You love it. Another player that is not being given very good ratings on your sofa scores and your FB refs and all of that stuff, but one that passed the eye test for me yesterday. He played just about everywhere in that front third, but he sure did like that false 9 position. I thought Alexis was excellent yesterday at doing everything. I feel like he was the pass before the pass almost every time. I thought he was excellent. He played where I think we've been asking Trossard to play in recent months, but on his own. He actually got to do it alone this time instead of being crowded out there. And I thought he did a really good job yesterday. I thought he just broke up that kind of... He basically just gave Lokonga a problem all day because he was all on his own. And he faded a little bit once Xhaka was able to reinforce him. But I thought he played really well.
Yeah, the pass before the pass pretty much sums it up. He was the one, I think, that was the fifth player involved in that first build-up to that second goal. He was the one that initially gave the ball to Cucurella or Trossard. I think when he doesn't try to put the game on his back and spank in 30-yard shots constantly, that brings out a better player. I think when he sits back, the game acts as this sort of metronome. In some ways, to me, he's better positioned to be a further up the pitch version of Lallana. Obviously, very different style of players, but can just spread the ball out and make something happen. They don't need to be the center of attention, but they can orchestrate. That's a good spot for him to be in, as opposed to, we need you to be, Walmart brand Messi. That's a bit of an ask. Hell of a game that's happening between Norwich and Burnley at the moment, by the way, which is, who knows what's happened with this relegation battle.
I was about to say, Burnley have a very favourable running. You would think that of those teams at the bottom prior to yesterday, that Burnley were probably going to be the favourite of those four to stay up. Everton then beat Manchester United. Cristiano gets upset, smashes some kid's phone, drama all over the place. Yeah. And then Norwich have just gone 2-0 up against Burnley with 4 or 5 minutes to go.
Cornet apparently missed an absolute gilt-edged chance too.
I've heard that too.
Thanks to my fantasy team. Brilliant. That's my fault.
I've got Weghorst as well. So yeah, joining you on that one. Yeah, I mean, it's getting a whole lot harder. They're essentially just playing spoiler at this point, aren't they, Norwich? Then they're not really going to stay up, barring an absolute miracle run. But they sure are dragging Burnley down with them, because that's an absolute killer result for them.
Speaking of which, with the table, I mean, we're up to 11th, 37 points with a very tough run-in. But again, it's amazing how one game can sort of change everyone's perspective on things, right? You know, we've got 1 point from 7 games. All of a sudden, we go to the Emirates and win, and all of a sudden we're at 11th and everything looks rosy again.
I feel like the results this weekend especially have thrown even more chaos. Even the ones as we're talking right now, I mean, you've got, I don't think anyone would have called Brentford winning 2-0. They're a very different proposition under the Christian Eriksen lightning rod that's sort of happened. Because they went through a real slump, didn't they, Brentford? Now they're pretty much in and around where we're at, right? They're 13th, 1 point behind us. They played an extra game. It's a really weird table between 10th and 16th. It's separated by 4 points. We could end up pretty much anywhere. We've got enough points at this point. I think we can. I don't want to. I'm touching wood and stuff around me, But I think that the relegation battle is really, it's that bottom three, and then hopefully, they can claw at Everton a little bit. It's now whether can we do the unthinkable and finish 10th, or do we finish 16th? All of those possibilities are open.
Yep, absolutely. I don't think there's any prizes for man of the match this week. I think for me, Mwepu is the obvious shoo-in. I mean, it just feels silly to even really contemplate who else could possibly be on there. Caicedo, I thought, played well. Cucurella, excellent, but a goal and an assist to his name after coming back. Awesome. Went off with a bit of a knock, but he was also selected for post-match presser. So I think he wasn't that hurt, because generally they tend to keep people like that out of it if they've got even just a slight knock, to make sure they're icing it or whatever. So the fact that he was picked up for the post-match stuff makes me feel a little bit more confident that he might well be just be a genuine knock.
Where's Enoch on the door in the chat? This is his day.
It's time to shine.
Oh, he's still on his weekend bender. As a celebration. So
third bottle of Moet.
Plot twist: it is Mwepu.
Yeah.
I hope it isn't anything too bad. I think, like you said, it's just he brings something to the team that we don't typically have. We saw it. Let's hope it's not too bad.
I think what is bad though is obviously we'll get onto this. I know that Alex has messaged in the chat here, but we should probably talk about Moda. We haven't had a chance to talk about that horrible outcome. Yeah.
What's that? It's what, 6-7 months?
From what, and there's an account that started to crop up a little bit more. I'll give him a shout out. Dr. Rajpal Bra of at 3CB Performance put out a video on Moda's injury, basically saying that it's a pretty bad ACL rupture. And from that video, it seems like he's saying he's not really going to be back until the next, the somewhere deeper in the 23 season. That's what he was saying, like a long time, because there's the recovery, but then he's got all the rehab that comes along with it. What's awful for him as well is that he's playing pretty well for Poland.
I was about to say,
a horrible situation
for him to miss the World Cup as well, especially when they literally just qualified as well through the playoffs. That's the kicker for the person himself, that you get to the World Cup, you help your country get to the World Cup, and then a week later you have a pretty severe rupture of your ACL, and all of a sudden that doesn't look realistic anymore. It's gutting, really. I feel for the guy.
Another reason to hate the cursed Winter World Cup, because if it's the summer, he's probably making that. Let's talk about that real quick, actually. Battle of the green card versus the homeland. We draw the USA again in the groups. Not sure we could have had a more favourable group for England, could we, in that World Cup draw? Given the way they mess around with, you can't have 2 African clubs in this and 2 whatever clubs here and there. I hate that it's going to be a Winter World Cup, but we are probably going to be talking about it more than any World Cup that I probably, if we can do this podcast for another 40 years, we probably won't be talking about it again, not as much as this, because it's going to be smack bang in the middle of the season. I mean, how nice is that for England's group draw?
Looks good. Yeah. I mean, considering how well that, I guess, the national team is playing at the moment, I don't think we'll have any qualms in that group. But yeah, I don't think you could have made it any better for us, really. But then again, touching all the wood around me, and that it might not go that way. We saw that before. Just a shout out to England USA the day after Thanksgiving as well for us. That makes it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, I really wanted the USA in the group.
Same.
And then we've got the added potential ridiculousness that potentially it's Scotland or Wales as well, right? Or Ukraine. You've got Iran's the other team. There's a lot of sort of geopolitical narratives in this. So but footballing wise, if we don't come out on top of that group comfortably, with the ability to switch in and out players, give people rests. Big. It's almost seems ridiculous at this point though to even speculate about things, because the level in which players can fall in and out of form. Normally, we'd be talking now and saying, you know what, Harry Kane's playing some of the best football he has. Thank God, because he was playing horrendous the last, few months back. But it's not for 7 months. Like, he could be in his, because he has those horrible, like, what is it, August or September, where he never scores. He could be crap again then, like it's difficult for us to really even speculate. And players that maybe aren't even properly on the radar being in the England squad could come out in the start of the Premier League season. There could be a player that moves from one team to another and starts playing incredibly well that is on the plane that we aren't talking about now. So it's a weird situation. I think the worst thing about it for me is the part of the special thing about European or World Cups is you get to go crazy and sort of drink outside, and it's summer and everything's awesome. Craig, you're going to be in the pits of a Chicago winter. Like, we're going to, people are going to be crammed inside but it's not the same vibe. It just isn't. There's other holidays happening. It's just, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm like that 6 months of the year anyway, so I'm kind of used to it by now. But yeah, you're right. There's that lack of, I guess, just anticipation. I think the 2018 World Cup was like one of the best summers in the UK for me, and just an incredible time. But like you said, people are going to have their Christmas trees up. Watching the World Cup, it's going to feel very, very strange.
I can't believe the teetotal Qataris didn't consider the British binge drinking culture in there.
It's quite rude, actually.
Hosting. Yeah, it really is.
You say that. We were here for the Euros this year. This is Euros, and there was a lot of Americans hammered in my pub that I went to when we were in the final. They were blitzed. And they don't even have a dog in the fight. There was one lad in an Italian top, the classic American that says he's Italian.
Yeah, they're either Irish or Italian, depending who's on the world stage at the time. Yeah,
of course. Let's talk about the last thing before we bounce. Probably Alex in the chat. Can we only play well against good clubs when we're punching above our weight? I think this is something we've talked about at length, actually, especially over this last 2 months. Craig, you already touched on it in this pod in particular. I think the answer to that is one we've given a lot. We play better against clubs that are not afraid to play their game against us. Play teams that want to come out, want to attack, want to go toe to toe with us. We tend to play better against those sorts of teams. It lends itself to a lot more open space for us to do what we want to do. And I think that, especially away from home, clubs are always going to be more assertive for us whenever we're going away. And I think that, again, that just lends into probably why our away form is better than our home form. Because when we come to the Amex, you'll have Saints in a week's time, 2 weeks' time. Saints will come to the Amex and they will set up shop to frustrate and hit us on the counter attack with your Che Adams and your rapid players and your wall of proud set pieces. That's what they will do. That's what we will struggle to break down. I would predict us more to get a result against Spurs than I would against Saints at this point in time.
I'll throw in my contrary counterpoint that we mentioned before. Is in some ways this narrative of playing well against, or let's say getting results against the bigger teams, was much more a thing last year, and we had all the XG thing going on. This year, though, you just have to look at the results. We talked about this before. For the actual teams we've got 3 points out of this year, remove the Arsenal game yesterday from your minds just for 2 seconds. Watford, Everton, Brentford, Leicester with a bit of luck on our side, Brentford again, Watford again, Burnley. Most of those sides are currently embroiled in a relegation battle. So yes, it does feel to the eye test a lot of the times. We play really well against the bigger teams because they come out more. But results-wise, we've beaten teams that are worse than us this season, pretty much. And we've lost, or there's the appearance of the cat on the camera, nice. Or we've lost against the bigger teams. So, yeah.
And that's exactly it. Like, we play well, we still lose.
The Arsenal game was the exception to that yesterday, thankfully. Despite the alarming end to the game. That was really outside of the Leicester game. The first time we've walked away from a game against a real top 6 side and got 3 points this year.
It was really outside the stereotype, wasn't it? Less possession, less shots, and come away with a really good win. And all of a sudden, everyone's feeling good again. So it definitely helps.
It's crazy what you do when you cross balls into multiple players in the box. They take shots from inside the keeper's area, and then you get one right on the edge of the box, and they go in. It's mental as opposed to peppering the stand behind the goal from 40 yards out with a wild shot that you've taken 45 passes to build up to.
Or crossing it in multiple times to a singular person in the box. So definitely different.
Yep. Two teams in great form at the minute as well. Spurs coming up. They've only lost one of their last 6, and that was against Manchester United. Odd. That was that 3-2 game. And then obviously Manchester City, who are currently top of the table. We're going to wrap up here in a minute. Go get yourselves a drink, beer, wine, coffee, whatever you fancy, depending on what time of day it is. And settling down for the big one at 4:30 UK time, 11:30 in the morning here. Manchester City versus Liverpool should be a belter. I'm going to the MLS game today. That was a bad time thing against Atlanta United, so that should be interesting.
You couldn't really be watching more of a sort of different grade of the opposite end of the spectrum. Like the highest peak of footballing prowess is on display, and you're going to watch essentially
mid-table League One.
Yeah. Part-time football players.
Yeah. I'm recording it. I'm just going to avoid spoilers and just watch it when I get home. The wife, I'm sure, will be delighted with that decision that I've made without her consultation. But as a fun thing, I went to Dallas shortly after I got back from the UK for WrestleMania. So I left my wife on her own for 6 days. She watched 22 episodes of Married at First Sight Australia in 6 days.
There's 22 episodes?
To 37.
Whoa.
So if I'm going to watch that, I'm going to watch it, I think. I don't think there'll be too much room for argument after that embarrassing statistic that I've just shared to the world for her.
Yeah, that sounds like an alarming use of time. Here we are. Funny, but the people that are going to be listening to this after the fact, probably early next week, Monday, Tuesday, it's going to feel probably silly that we're discussing this game now, and that always these big drummed up games where there's lots of expectations, invariably it'll be some 0-0 shit show where it's very unimpressive and it doesn't answer any questions. But here's hoping it's been different to the people listening after the fact.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. That's about everything we've got time for here. I think we've covered just about everything we needed to. Busy week next week, so get your rest, everybody listening, because we've got 3 back-to-back classic makeup games in April. Spurs, Man City, and then Saints to finish off the month. Lots to take a look at there. 2 very highly strung teams, and then one that's right next to us could well decide our position by the end of the year as to whether we're going to finish above or below Saints, I suspect, with the weird ass form that they show. So thank you, Moose, for continuing to absolutely harass my camera and microphone. But yeah, if anybody's got anything else, say it now. Otherwise, we're good to go.
All good for me.
Happy with 3 points, terrified of Spurs, but let's keep our fingers crossed.
Very succinctly put to end.
Yeah, well said, fellas. All right, have a good week, everybody. Here's to hoping this game after the pod is good, or you had a good time watching it whenever you end up listening. Be safe. Have a good week.
Cheers all.
Cheers, guys.